We are back with the Branding Your Business podcast. Again, my name is Praise Santos McKenna. I am the founder of Complum, which is a brand studio here in San Francisco, California. We have a really special series within the podcast in that we're bringing in experts to talk about personal branding. This is part of our Personal Branding Summit series because personal branding can be such a big term. And I want to make it practical and I want to help you up your thought leadership. And for us, it's really about thought servant leadership. It's about how do you serve your audience better by sharing your knowledge and getting out there more and serving more people who need what you've got. And so today, during the series, we have Amy Jackson with us, who I'm so excited. So let me tell you about her first. Amy has spent her career building and shaping brands during times of rapid change. She helped potato farmers navigate the era of low carb diets. She secured coverage in major media outlets leading up to the acquisitions of Bebo and Mint.com and led Living Social's PR efforts bridging to local merchant marketplace. Over the course of 8 years with SAP Concur, Amy built TripIt's high-performing PR and social program from scratch. She is a builder, people, and we get to tap her minds today. All of that led to coverage in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, Business Week, and NBC, just like some casual household names to name a few. Amy created Tailsplash to help emerging tech, health, and lifestyle brands share their expertise about the world changing around us. With decades of experience in PR, growing global technology brands as storytellers and digital strategists, clients like to think of Tailsplash as an extension of the team that can help in a multitude of ways. She lives in Austin Hill Country with her husband and her 2 boys, and she's here with us today. Thank you so much, Amy, for being here. Thank you for being willing to share knowledge with us today. Give us some Austin context right now. What is life looking outside? I see there's some window light going on around you. What is Austin like today?
So we are in our false fall here in Austin, even though we want it to be fall. And in some of the trees, it kind of looks like it's coming. It's still 92 degrees. So I might have deceiving clothing on, but this is linen, so at least it breathes.
Okay, when do the scarves come out in Austin? I grew up in Florida. When it hits 62, people are in scarves, hoodies, ready to go.
Yeah.
What's the Austin temperature
Yeah,
for
I
fall
would
there?
say, yeah, as soon as we get a little bit cooler in the mornings, I'm turning on the fireplace because that's my favorite. And my 6-year-old is like, when can we turn on the fireplace? I'm like, well, 60 is still a little toasty for that, but we're getting close. So maybe 40, 50 in the mornings.
That is so funny because we love the feeling, so we're craving any
We are.
hints that it gives us.
Yeah.
That is so good. I love being able to read about what you've built and your history in PR and what you created. Having built a career in PR, how can you simplify it for some of us who are intimidated by that word or intimidated by that phrase? I feel it's on the to-do list of a lot of business owners, but is there a way to simplify the idea of what PR is?
Yeah, at its simplest stage, it's getting in front of journalists, whether you have a product or you are an expert, or perhaps you are both. And basically, you are offering that product or expertise to journalists or podcasts so that you can help build your brand by getting that third party validation. So if you go to somebody's website and you see that they've been featured in some top media outlets, that might convince you to purchase their product because you're hearing about it for the first time, but you're seeing that it's been fact checked and validated by a trusted third party.
Yeah, I think naturally we're a bit skeptic of people, right? You're like, okay, this is the internet. Anyone claim that they are the best skincare product, but who's going to vet it? Since I know I'm such a word of mouth person, I'd rather ask a friend, hey, what product do you really love right now? What's the best thing for me? But our friend could be Bloomberg, Newsweek. It could be this podcast. So you're saying it's just that extra stamp of validation, that extra stamp of trust. That's really what PR is for small businesses.
That's right.
And why should small business owners in 2024? Is this something we should still be focusing on and in an age where we're creating our own media? Is it still relevant to us today?
It is. And I think they go hand in hand, because when you get featured in a media outlet that people recognize, and then you feature that in your own channels, it only adds to the power and strength of what you're saying that you have to offer. So they really work nicely together. And the reality is that media outlets still have a lot larger reach than any of the brands out there trying to build a following for the first time. It's hard. It takes a lot of work to build your reach, and so two work really nicely together.
Yeah, that's a really great point. It's about sharing someone's audience. So it's about validation, but our reach is limited. Like our email list is limited, social media following is limited, let alone the algorithms of like what gets even shown to the people who want to see our stuff. But these media outlets have established themselves for a long time. So you can reach thousands, 10,000s, hundreds of thousands of people much faster than if we were just doing it by ourselves. That's huge. Um, are
Absolutely.
there are there trends right now in like the PR space because
Mm-hmm.
it is 2024? Like what are you seeing as an agency right now?
Yeah, there's a lot of change in the world of PR, and there always has been. I've been doing it for 20 years. So I went from shipping like discs with images on them to newsrooms in the mail to where we are today, where AI is actually helping play matchmaker between products and experts and journalists. And as PR professionals, we're just there to facilitate that connection. So if a reporter is looking for a product to review because they're writing about fall fashion, or they're looking for nutritionists to share healthy eating tips for the holidays, it's a lot easier for them. They can just post that online, and then all of those available sources respond and say, hey, I can give you these 3 tips that you need in order to hit your deadline that's tomorrow. So technology is making PR more efficient, and we're able to support newer brands in a more effective way than we used to, because of all this technology that's helping us be faster at getting results for clients.
Yeah, what technology? Because there's so much when we talk about AI. There's so many tools. Do you have any favorites right now if folks are looking
Mm-hmm.
to like, I want to answer this reporter's help or I want to make my pitch sound better? What are the tools in your toolbox, Tailsplash's toolbox that you're really loving right now?
Yes, there's a couple that really stand out. So, Quoted, Quoted, is a great place if you're an expert to connect with journalists and podcasts. Another great platform if you have a product is Presshook. And that's where you can have a profile for your products, and you can actually make them available for journalists and sometimes influencers to request to try. So if you're willing to ship your product to them, then you could be included in a story or a very, wide reaching social post.
Quoted and Presshook. Presshook,
Mm-hmm.
that's great branding on that part. Like I
Mm-hmm.
immediately know what they do
Yeah.
with a name like that. When it comes to using some of these tools, we coach a lot of people like through the podcast, and some of our personal clients have put about putting together like a strategy and a launch strategy, because a lot of folks are building and they're creating something. Or what we're seeing a lot right now, and especially with the summit, we see a lot of folks leaving the corporate world knowing they've built years of experience in more traditional spaces, and now they're venturing out on their own. So they're launching their own personal brands. When do they need to think about PR? Like, when do they need to put it in their strategy? Because for some people, it's like bottom of the to do list. They're like working with their networks, or they're just kind of trying more natural methods. Or are you saying we should be thinking about this firsthand? Where do you think we should be putting that on our radar in our strategy?
Yeah. So I was one of those that left corporate and was like, what do I need to do before I tell the world that I'm open for business? And I felt like I had to have a website. I had to be on all the major social media networks. And then I really leaned into LinkedIn. So I think LinkedIn, if you're a well connected professional, is such a great place to start in terms of getting the message out there that you are now open for business. But you can start PR really as soon as you have a website up. So if you're available, engage with customers across the country, there's no reason you can't start your PR efforts. And that can happen once you have a destination for people to go to learn more about you. So really you need like a bio, a headshot, and you're good to go. And that's enough to get your website up, right? And then from there, it's just a matter of tapping into that network that you've built over the years in your corporate career. And for me, those were my first clients, was people that I had previously worked with. And we reconnected when I opened Tailsplash. And it was a great way to kick things off in the beginning of our journey.
Yeah, you are the model story. You are someone who's had like the corporate experience. You imagine you felt that nudge to be like, okay, I'm going to go out on my own, and you're leveraging your network. Thank you again for simplifying that a website doesn't have to be so complicated. Our studio, we love to build websites for people, but we also love to demystify like, hey, like it doesn't have to be so complicated. It's a hub, right? It's an online space for people to be able to contact you and access a lot of your information. And you're saying it's almost like you're doing your own PR. Once you have like LinkedIn, it's announcing to the world, hey, I'm doing this thing. Here's that problem that I can help you solve. And you're starting to put that out there. Are you also saying that we could use LinkedIn to ask people for like press connections or ask folks for media resources? Is LinkedIn even a good way to get like podcast interviews? How have you and your team used it to utilize your strategy of upping someone's personal brand and thought leadership?
Yeah, I mean, you can find a lot of information on LinkedIn. And so if you did research on either your, target customer, like search terms, like I've done a search in quotes, looking for a PR agency, and have found companies that have posted on LinkedIn that they're looking for a PR agency. So depending on like what business you're in, you could even like get business just from what people post on LinkedIn. But from a media standpoint, there are journalists that post looking for sources on LinkedIn. Same with X. So if you start out just by following reporters or connecting with reporters, that's a great place to start. A lot of freelance writers have their own Substack newsletters, so you can subscribe and be notified whenever they're looking for sources. So these are all things that you can do for free. It just takes time. But when you're first starting out, you usually have more time. It's when you get going and you have customers that you don't have as much time. And then it's easier just to have somebody else think about it and take care of it for you. But yeah, in the beginning, you can start out by following reporters that write about your space, listening to podcasts that cover the industry you're in, and reaching out to them. And then it's just a matter of making sure that they know that you are a credible expert and the kinds of things that you could talk about on their podcast. And it's pretty straightforward. It just takes time to reach out and to do the work to research who you should be contacting.
Yeah, it's funny because I know when I am launching or going on wanting to get the word out there of something new we're doing, I almost feel like I'm going fishing, because I really believe like we've done the research that there is this need out there. There are people who want it, but it's not like you make a website and then suddenly a ton of people come to you. Like maybe if your SEO is great, maybe, but it's a lot of active work on our end of creating relationships and creating connections. And I love that it's so practical. You're like, hey, there are reporters in your industry who put the word out there. They're asking for people to submit. They're asking like, hey, do you want this opportunity? We want to feature you because you are an expert. But there's often this gap, Amy, and I've seen it on our end of being also kind of a media platform with a podcast and our blog, of people also wanting to use our platform. What are your tips for like, okay, we found this reporter. They're asking us to share about something that I actually am an expert on. It's almost like dating. Like, how do you ask them out of just like, okay, here it is. Like, how do you slip into their DMs? What kind of pitches work and what often fails? Like, how can our folks just beginning to make that transition into thought leadership really do this well?
So very similar to dating, do not overwhelm them with your life story. Like you wouldn't do that on a date. So don't do it in an email with a journalist or a podcast producer. So just keep it brief, but make the most of the words that you choose to include in that message, right? So really focus on like what's in it for them, and then give them resources to find out more about you, or if they're intrigued, they will ask if they need more information. So don't give them, the whole decade's worth of detail about your past. Just give them a little teaser and think about what they need out of the situation.
Yeah, it's a lot of empathy putting yourself in their shoes too, which, yeah, this is bonus on our personal brand summits. Also, dating advice, people don't come on too strong with your whole life story. People will ghost you, run away, etc. And I think it's such an important way of thinking too. Again, when we're even creating businesses, putting ourselves in the other person's shoes of what's in it for them? How are you solving their problem? And the press, they do have a problem, right? They need resources, they need experts. And so it sounds like we start following this person on X. They put out a call, we DM them or we tweet them back, we X them back. Is that our terminology that we
Like
use
that.
now? And say, hey, we noticed that you put a call out here. Here is a link to my website. I have X experience in this area. Let me know if you want to chat more, if I can be a resource to you. Is it something as simple as
Yeah,
that?
that's great. Or if they have specific questions, which they do in a lot of the forums that we're in, they just want a couple sentences response to each question. So you, again, don't need to give them like paragraphs of information. Just give them kind of high level what they're looking for, and then they'll follow up if they need more information from you.
That's incredible. And then oftentimes, and because I've seen it when we've done pitches for press, it's been really interesting with like turnaround time and follow up. Is it good PR practice to ask, like, okay, when is this going to be published? Or
No.
do you just kind of like leave it there and then just wait for it to come out?
So a lot of journalists will let you know once it's live, but there's also monitoring services that we have set up so we know as soon as stories hit for our clients. But yeah, it's not a super, recommended practice to like follow up with them and say, "Hey, do you know when it's running?" Unless it's been like several months, then I think it's fine. But a lot of times they're at the mercy of their editors, so they don't always know when it's going to be live. So it's not something that, they might even have the answer to. So I like to wait, give it some time. And then if it's really been like several months, then it's totally fair to go back and say, I really loved talking to you, but just curious if updated timing for the story.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And I do think for traditional media and journalists, that is so good to remember, right? They are trying to do their jobs, but there's also all these circumstances that they're working with, trying to balance out the needs of the people they serve as well. What about with some newer outlets, like with the podcast too, or if people are using podcasts as part of their strategy to get more visibility? Have you seen different norms in those newer media outlets of things like follow up or things like, oh, there's like actually this tool to find out when your podcast gets published? I'd love to hear if you have any tricks up your sleeves for newer media like that.
Yeah, so podcasts are not held to the same restrictions as traditional media in terms of like AI and using AI to get in touch with them or to transcribe a podcast episode into other content. And they're also really good about promoting the episodes. So I have been pleasantly surprised at how proactive the podcast teams have been about sending graphics, letting you know it's live or going live soon, and giving you what you need as the podcast guest to promote it in your channel. So I feel like podcasts are so good at marketing content and repurposing one episode into multiple formats that is really inspirational for other types of media coverage to follow suit.
Yeah, that is definitely the name of the game. That's even our end of the game. I'm really grateful for our team who like is able to. I sometimes get surprised. I'm like, oh yeah, look, our podcast is on YouTube. How fun! We get to see it there too. And
Totally.
so, yeah, I love acknowledging that podcasts are a little different medium, a little bit of a different format. Before I move on to my next question, you mentioned something that I think is such a cool tool, or there are tools out there. Monitoring. Like, should we set up alerts of, especially for a personal brand, like of our name in Google? Like, what are the tools you use? And are there some that the average person on their own can use to monitor? Like, okay, like this is a way we can find out where that thing goes live.
Yeah, so I think the best thing to do is just to check the podcast or check the news site, frequently. But you can try Google Alerts. I have to say, like when I created Tailsplash, I felt like Google Alerts weren't as effective as they used to be. There's no harm in setting them up. It's probably just not going to catch everything. And that's just one of the services that a PR agency is going to have in place so that you don't have to pay for it, because it is pricey to have that turned on. But it's really the most effective way to know the moment a story hits. The other way is just through social media, because a lot of media outlets and podcasts are publishing stories on their social media channels throughout the day. So you might hear about it that way, but it's just a matter of like, kind of focusing on the ones that you're going to be appearing in and checking those on a regular basis, or having a more, traditional monitoring service through a PR agency.
Okay, that's so good. Yeah, traditional monitoring service through a PR agency, Google Alerts, even though it seems like it's not as strong as it used to be, too. And even just checking socials of the news sites that you've pitched to or you've gotten an okay from, too. This is just a side note. I remember this is September 2024. At one point, Instagram had this thing where if there's really someone you want to follow and you want to make sure the algorithm doesn't hide it, you can go to that profile and make sure like notifications are turned on or some that it's always in the feed. And so that's just like a little bonus, just because, yeah, the algorithm keeps on changing and it's not just showing you recent stuff, it's showing you stuff people paid for you to see. So that's also a good reminder for us too.
And a great tip that is something that I've used, where I will like check the box on X to follow certain journalists, like to get notified when they post. So that way, if they're writing a story that one of our clients is a fit for, we're seeing their X tweets, whatever they are, prompting us like on our mobile devices. So that's a great way to be on top of certain reporters, or to keep an eye out for coverage or stories that they've published, is to use those extra notifications.
Okay, this is so good. I'm glad we're like driving and remembering these resources, because I know it would be really helpful for people as they're building their personal brands. Another really practical question, because sometimes people just want to be told we need this, is have you seen a special combination or an effectiveness meter of, hey, try to go for this many pitches in traditional media and this many pitches in podcasts, or this many, name your other medium? Is it kind of a numbers game? Is it a math game of different combinations of different mediums? I'd love to know your recipe as Amy, as founder of Tailsplash, what you recommend for your clients too.
So it really is different for every single client. And that's what makes PR so effective, but also so mysterious, because there's no straightforward formula for everybody. But I will say, for all of our clients, whether they are selling to consumers or selling to businesses, there is something to offer the trade publications that cover their industry. There's something to offer consumer media and, lifestyle media. Let's say you're in the climate tech space and you have software that's really geared towards businesses, but your point of creating this innovation is to help society as a whole. You have something to offer consumers in terms of your expertise. And so you should be connecting with reporters that have a consumer audience and reporters that have more of a trade audience. And also podcasts. There's podcasts for everything under the sun nowadays. And so really, like, that's the trifecta to think about. And then in terms of outreach, it just depends on what you're pitching and when. And we do recommend that you have a regular correspondence with the journalists that cover your space. And that could be that they're regularly asking for you, and that's enough. Or if you're proactively pitching, it's something that should be done like on a monthly basis.
Yeah, it seems like the name of the game, well, like in business, especially specifically with PR, just stay on people's radar. Like,
Exactly.
help them remember that you exist and that you're there, which can be hard because, sometimes winter comes, things get rough, and we kind of just want to hide a little bit. But it's kind of keeping things fresh, keeping them on their toes, keeping us on our toes, and reminding like we have something to offer them and they have something to offer us. It can be a really mutually beneficial relationship. I love to hear that. And I Yes, I kind of set you up. I'm like, I want an answer, Amy. I want it not to be nuanced. I want you to tell me 5 + 5 = 10, but it makes sense that there isn't really a secret formula because I imagine it depends on the industry, the needs, what's trending. So it almost sounds like adaptability is also the name of the game when it comes to
Absolutely.
PR.
Yeah, adaptability and timing. Like basically, it's a matter of being in the right place at the right time. And that changes. So sometimes there's some seasonality that you can predict, like holiday gift guides. Every summer, journalists start working on those and kind of creeping later, but it's usually around August or the first round of deadlines. And then it rolls into like the end of October. But that's kind of it for the holiday gift guide window. However, those same editors are writing stories for other gifting occasions. So that's just, the primary holiday season that we all think about. But then there's, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, graduation, weddings, summer. Like there's all kinds of gifting throughout the year that these same gift guide editors are writing stories for. So there's, a time and a place to get on the radar of journalists, but then continue to follow up with them when the timing makes sense to do so. Or if there's breaking news that you're relevant for, if there's a trend that you can have some, expertise to offer. Those are all reasons to follow up and offer something new. I like to say, don't go out with the same pitch over and over. Like bring something new to the table and they will respect that versus, it feeling like the same boilerplate every time.
Yes. I mean, we're dynamic people. Our knowledge base changes, the world changes too. So it's also believing we always have something to offer, making it relevant to them. And again, like keeping on their radar. And again, you mentioned there are so many great tools that we can use to help refine some of these things. I know AI is really cool to help us figure out, okay, how does our expertise is branding and how does branding relate to AI is really trendy right now? How can we help craft that specific pitch to make it more relevant to these journalists? The thing that I've seen though too with AI is that sometimes I can tell it's written with AI. Do you have any tips? I know that this is such your specialty when it comes to AI and PR. How do we make it that we use AI as a tool and resource, but not make it sound like we used a robot to help us with some of these things?
Yeah, so I like AI for research and for matchmaking, but really it's frowned upon to use it to write content in the world of journalism. So that means it's frowned upon in the world of PR too, because we don't want a really clever creative pitch to get flagged by content detector that says this is AI and it ends up in the spam folders. Unfortunately, journalists are held to pretty strict standards around the use of AI. So, really, your response or your pitch or your press release needs to be you, your own words.
That is so good. Yes. Use AI for research. Use it for matchmaking to help you like scour the endless internet. But when it comes to your pitch, this is when you rely on like the human beauty of creativity and making it really relevant and relying on yourself for that. That is so good. Are there other kind of tips and tricks or even soft skills we need to have when it comes to PR in 2024?
I think just always looking at what's in the news related to the space that you're in and forming an opinion about it. And that way you're ready. If you do have an opportunity to comment on something that's in the news cycle, being kind of ready to share, what do you think? What does this mean for your industry? What does this mean for you as a business owner? And just kind of have those thoughts ready to go.
Yeah. Create your own hot take. Like make sure that
Mm-hmm.
you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
Having an opinion. I
Yes.
love to hear that too. We need to hear people's voices. We need to hear a diversity of opinions too. It
Mm-hmm.
sounds like almost taking the space to like sit back. Wait, how is this affecting my life? My business too. Because when I put myself in a journalist's shoes, they probably know what the masses think about something, but they ought to get those adverse voices to say, actually, there's some people who also think like this. There's a representative of people who think a little differently than most folks too. So I love to hear you're granting us permission to make it a little saucy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it
They
sounds
like
like
that.
our media space will be better for it.
Yeah.
That is so good. Amy, you are such a model when it comes to creating your own personal brand because This was part of your story. You left the corporate world, you had to make your own connections, and you, even as someone who does PR, you have to also get PR yourself too. Looking back, because I know a lot of the people who will be attending the summit, listening to some of this content, they're more kind of in the beginning, just dipping their toes. Looking back, is there some advice or some tips and tricks that you wish someone would have told you early on to make this thought leadership or thought servant leadership, as we're trying to say with the Personal Brand Summit, that could have made it a bit easier for you, or something that really helped you in the beginning?
I have to say, I got really great advice because I spent over 2 or maybe 3 years talking to moms about their career paths, and many of them were entrepreneurs. And I heard over and over, just do it. Don't be scared. It's going to be great. Like, just do it. And I wish I'd done it sooner. And I have to say that has rung true. Like, I have more flexibility as a mother doing this business than I would have if I was, at the mercy of someone saying, hey, you need to get on a plane and be at this offsite, with your team. And so I have to say, like, the no fear message that I heard from so many women I met with over the course of many years has really turned out to be true. And sure, it's scary to take a leap and build something from scratch and make a living doing it. But if you have the means to do so, to take that leap, I think you can really, bring opportunities to so many people. And I have the pleasure of having a team of 9 women, some of which I'd previously worked with, some of which were laid off, some of which just graduated, many of which are moms. And I have the pleasure of bringing their expertise to our clients. And that is like, what really makes it feel like it was all worth it. And I'm so glad I did it.
I love to hear this, Amy. And we need to be exposed to stories like this. Michelle Obama has a quote like, you can't be what you can't see. So once we hear stories like this, and it sounds like it took 2 to 3 years of other women and mothers telling you, Amy, you can do this, you got to do it. And you're like, confirmed. I should have done this sooner. What I really love to hear is that you are creating this for the people on your team too. And who knows what careers and businesses they'll bring to. And we really believe here at Complum with our branding studio that it's this beautiful domino effect, that there's this magic inside of everyone. There's this magic that these journalists want to hear from all these folks who have this thought leadership in them, but oftentimes people are scared to share it. Like, do I have the guts to do it? But once you take a little step, it's going to be better for our world because of it. Once you have that saucy opinion about something, we need that diversity in media, and hearing stories like yours of like, okay, take a little step. You can do this. You can run your own business, having this time and freedom, and even creative freedom to spend with the people you love and build the life you love. That is true inspiration. So thank you so much for sharing. I know that a lot of folks will want to connect with you more. I know we'll be sharing this resource on the podcast later, but especially as part of the summit, how can folks connect with you and the work that you do?
Thank you so much. So I am available at amy@talesplash.com. Our website is talesplash.com, TALE, and we are on all the major social media channels. So I always love to get on a call and just kind of hash out, like, what are your questions when it comes to PR or thought leadership, and what have you tried, and what should you maybe consider trying, and do you need an extra set of hands? Because we can certainly help you.
That is so good. Okay. And we'll put that in the show notes too. So talesplash.com. And listen up, people. Amy is offering basically much of her beloved, well experienced time to help you as you're branching out and starting your own PR too. So please take her up on this offer. Amy, it was a pleasure to have you on the podcast and part of this Personal Brand Summit series. We are so grateful for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Praise. You're such a ray of light.